Calgary Flames have a few different directions they can go and players they can build around for the future if they decide not to go all in this year for a playoff berth. All signs point to a few players the Flames can build around, including recent draftees Zary, Dustin Wolf, and Zayne Parekh. But genuinely, what is the best way for General Manager Craig Conroy to go about this? We're going to discuss that and more in this video, but first I want to welcome you to Flames Digest. I'm Mark Griffith. If you're new around here and you love the Flames, make sure you subscribe so you can stay up to date on all the latest news, updates, reports, and rumors revolving around your Calgary Flames. We would love to welcome you to the Flames Digest family, and this break has gone on too long. Man, I want to watch some Flames hockey, but for now, let's get into the Conroy Conundrum. I don't even know if I spelt it right there, but feel free to correct me down in the comments if that's not how that's spelled. But either way, Conroy has a lot on his plate because this team is, you know, it's interesting. It can make the playoffs this year, really piggybacking off of Dustin Wolf and the goaltending because the firepower isn't really there. But is that what's best for the franchise, or should they really, tank, I guess we can say, and ensure that they do get their first round pick, because it's not like they're that much ahead of a top 10 pick. It's interesting overall. But we have a great article to look at by Gordon Kent here from the Calgary Herald, so all credit due to him. So he writes the conundrum. Oh, I guess I did write it or spell it correctly earlier. The conundrum facing Craig Conroy and the Calgary Flames. And I'm not going to go over the whole article. It is really good if you want to go read it. Essentially, the first two things he talks about is kind of which group to build around. Now, the first group is around the Connor Zary cohort is what he called it. And essentially what he means about that is, players that were drafted a little while ago, not this most recent draft, but the ones before that, but not a long time ago. So kind of players aged, 22 to 25 sort of range. So guys like Zary, guys like Coronato, who I know is younger, but guys like Zary, Coronato, Wolf, Sharangovich even, guys in that kind of age range, so building around them. Then he also says, there's also the Parekh cohort, so more so guys who were recently drafted in the 2024 NHL draft, especially Parekh because he looks incredible. And then the guys that the Flames will get over the next, kind of few drafts here as the team isn't expected to be all that great. So I kind of want to skip ahead and kind of just go ahead and look at the big conundrums here. So, here we go. The Flames' perpetual crossroads. Essentially another word to say the mushy middle that we are always in. So this isn't an easy path. It means resisting the gravitational pull of just good enough, which has been the defining feature of the Flames for decades. I've never really seen dominant Flames hockey in my entire life, to be honest. The team hasn't won a Stanley Cup since 1989. It hasn't made it past the second round since they also won the Cup in 2004. We all know it was in. And yet, time and again, they have chosen the quick fix path, adding a UFA, making a mid-tier trade, rather than accepting the hard truth. To build a great team, you sometimes have to stick to a longer-term vision. And it certainly seems as though Conroy has been the GM, at least in the recency, that has stuck to that the most, you would think. I mean, the Frost-Farabee trade, I still like it, but it kind of goes against that in a way. But the structure of the NHL rewards the boom and bust cycle. You need multiple elite players to win championships, and those players overwhelmingly come from the top of the draft. That said, if you have a player like Wolf, who makes it difficult to bottom out, yes, he is that good, then you need to make as many picks as possible to compensate. Which isn't to say the club should somehow throw the season to avoid making the playoffs and losing their pick to Montreal. No, the Flames will try to make the playoffs, and I don't think many people will be complaining about that if the Flames do get in. If Wolf's heroics turn into a Cinderella playoff appearance for the Flames, then that should be lauded and celebrated, and that's extremely true. The Flames kind of came out of nowhere this season, and a lot of people did not expect them to be where they are. I'm guilty of that. I know most Flames fans are guilty of that as well, so it would really be celebrated if they do squeak in somehow. But even in the unlikely event that the Flames do sneak into the playoffs, the organization should remain committed to its long-term vision of a rebuild. They do not yet have the required future stars or superstars in the pipeline to become a true contender, especially, as we all know, at that center position that you can't go a day without hearing as a Flames fan. A team cannot compete on goaltending alone. An elite goalie can make a bad team into a good one, but cannot make a good team into a legit contender. You need firepower. And it's kind of funny. You think of some of these teams that have won the Cup over the past decade decade or even 15 years, sometimes their goalie isn't even all that great. They just get kind of hot in a way. I mean, you think back to guys like Antti Niemi and what was his name? Corey Crawford, and even Jordan Binnington in 2019. You know, these guys were obviously carried by their teams, especially those Chicago teams, of course, that won those cups. But another argument is that you do need a really good goalie, but some of the greatest goalies, you know, of the past 10, 15 years didn't win any cups. So it is interesting overall. The numbers bear this out. At the break, the Flames are 30th in goals for, 28th on the penalty kill, 15th on the power play, which isn't bad, but again, not a legit threat. And 32nd, so dead last in goals per 60 of ice time at even strength, which is just terrible. If the Flames aren't on a power play, and, you know, recency bias would say if the Flames aren't on a 5-on-3, goals are extremely hard to come by. So Jonathan Huberdeau, their leading scorer, has just 41 points, good for 80th in the league. So Huberdeau, you know, he's really cooled off. He had a great December, has really cooled off in the new year, which is too bad because he's still having a pretty good year, but 80th in the league in points is our leading scorer. And that's for a guy who was top 15 in terms of how much he is getting paid this year. So it is really not an ideal scenario here. They're 4th in even strength save percentage. So the Flames are really getting carried by their goaltending, especially Wolf, as we know. In short, there's still a lot to do to get this roster to the next level. So what does that mean? Well, it means that all signs point to this, like the title of the video says, and we're continuing with the article here. So the path forward, what should the Flames do? The answer is clear, at least to obviously Gordon Kent, the author of this article. So he says commit to the Parekh timeline. If he develops into a Quinn Hughes or Cale Makar level player, he will be a cornerstone level talent, and he certainly is looking like that right now. I mean, he might be the first OHL defenseman to ever get back-to-back 30-goal seasons. Build around that timeline, not the artificial urgency created by Wolf's excellence in net. You kind of gotta agree there. Commit to that timeline. That doesn't mean that you can't obviously focus on some of those guys from the Zary cohort that we spoke about earlier. You know, Coronato, Sharky, obviously Zary himself, and Wolf. And like it says here, develop the Zary cohort. They don't need to be discarded, but they need to be viewed as future veteran support pieces, not the core that will carry the team to a cup. So in no way should the Flames be getting rid of those players. Yes, they would be essential pieces to a very successful team that can win the Stanley Cup, but they won't be the key pieces. You know, you think of some of those teams that were so good for so long. You need your Patrick Kanes. You need your, Jonathan Taveses. You need your Duncan Keiths when you think of that Chicago team. You think of the Pittsburgh team that was so good for so long. You need your Crosby, your Malkin, and your Letang kind of thing. So it's true. We do have very good players. Coronato is amazing. Zary is amazing. Dustin Wolf is absolutely phenomenal as our number one goalie of the future, but we need those other key pieces, which will be part of the Parekh timeline and the Parekh cohort. So he is hopefully, that number one defenseman, cornerstone, Hughes/Makar type player, but the Flames also need that in terms of a forward that can really, really produce. Sell aging veterans as well, is what the author says. So Andersson, Kadri, Coleman, etc. These are players who won't be part of the next great Flames team. Very interesting to say that. A lot of people think Andersson could be, but who knows? If they can be moved for assets that help build for the future, it should be considered. And at the end of the day, we obviously got very attached to players, especially ones who want to be here, like Coleman and Kadri. But at the end of the day, sometimes you just do need to get rid of them. Does that mean we have to right away? No, of course not. But down the line, selling aging veterans really does help a team in terms of building for the future and getting better. And of course, keep the draft picks. Don't start selling the future to try to prop up an accelerated rebuild timeline, aka don't go for Dylan Cousins, essentially. They may have found a new franchise goalie, but they still need to pick early and often to build the Parekh cohort. The Flames are at a crossroads again. This time, they need to get the long-term vision right. The opportunity is there. The question is whether they have the patience to seize it. So all signs point to, the best thing to do here is really to commit to the next generation. And that might not really even include guys like, Zary and Coronato. It means they'll be here, but they won't be the main focus. So overall, let me know your thoughts. It's a very interesting article overall. Again, go ahead and read it. It's on the Calgary Herald if you haven't, and let me know what you think. Do you think the Flames should, again, really commit to the players that they don't even really have yet, and guys like Parekh, or stick to some of our good young guys now, or just continue to kind of be stuck in this eternal mushy middle that we find ourselves in and try to compete every year and maybe just be a Cinderella story and win the cup one year. Let me know what you think down below. The last thing we'll get into before the comment of the day is talking about Raz for Sweden, because we actually did get to see him last night if you were lucky enough to watch the Sweden against USA game. So Raz and Sweden defeated the United States 2-1 in their final game at the Four Nations face-off. Kind of a weird tournament for Sweden overall. Kind of a weird tournament so far just in general, where every single team will leave with a win. But obviously the final will be Canada and US like many predicted. But Sweden, weird. In 2 games that Raz didn't play, they lost both in overtime. And as Ryan Pike highlights, the only game that Flames defenseman Rasmus Andersson played at the Four Nations is the only game that Sweden won. Sweden, of course, lost in overtime to both Canada and Finland, and then beat the U.S., albeit the U.S. was a little bit banged up. But Raz last night, he played a little over 13 minutes, primarily D-zone situations, and he played well. It is true. He had a solid game. Did he do anything spectacular, flashy? Not really. A little bit of a scary moment in the third period when he blocked a shot with his hand, and he was icing his hand on the bench. I know all Flames fans who are watching were kind of holding their breath there, but no other news. Looks like he's absolutely fine. But again, would have been nice to see him play a little bit more, but at least we did get to see him, and he got the big win as well, which was wonderful to see. I think a lot of people are looking forward to that final game between Canada and the US on Thursday, which unfortunately will not include any Calgary Flames, of course, but quite a few former Calgary Flames. Now let's get into the comment of the day to wrap up this video. And this one was good. I thought it really went with the theme of this video, kind of talking about Parekh a little bit here. And it does come from, whoa, well, not Raz for Sweden again. It comes from Charlie. And Charlie said, I would literally give up a finger to get a Cale Makar / Quinn Hughes on the team. If he turns out to be one of those, it's a franchise-changing piece, and it really is. I also would give up a finger. I even tried to get rid of a finger and had to put on a green Band-Aid, but either way, I think most Flames fans completely agree. We would love to have a Cale Makar / Quinn Hughes type player. If Parekh keeps developing at this pace and keeps producing at this pace, he could end up being the best out of the 3 of them. Okay, that's a bit of a stretch, but we are hoping for that kind of player, as the article in this video kind of went over, and we are really hoping the best for Parekh. I can expect a lot of Parekh names on the back of jerseys once we are in that new arena. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe like you saw here today, and have a wonderful rest of your day.